Hi, everybody. It's Karen Eriksson-Lee again with Living by His Grace Ministries, and we are back again with John ULSH, who's going to talk a little bit more about his story over the last 17 years from the time of the accident until where he is now and the journey that his family has been on. Again, we'll get more into his book towards the end and where we can get it and all of that. But The Upside of Down is the name of his book, A Survivor's Guide to Turning Setbacks into Success. And um, I'm excited. That's going to be on my summer reading. So list, I'm very excited. We're almost out of school, and that's probably going to be the first thing I read. So anyway, John, take it away. Tell us a little bit more about the family's journey over the last 17 years.
So, when we were talking before, basically, I reached a point where we knew I was going to survive. That was questionable for a month or so, and so from that point forward, the question wasn't going to be whether I was going to live. It was going to be a question of what my life was going to be like. Um, Living in a nursing home, paralyzed. I was on a lot of narcotics for pain, needed narcotics, and this was 17 years ago. So before the narcotic epidemic that we had in our country, and so I was learning to deal with the pain that I was in. Again, shattered pelvis, shattered back. Never mind all the open, cuts and um, removal of organs. I was in chronic pain. And in the nursing home, I would spend, hours staring at a thumbtack on the bulletin board, just waiting for the next time I could have pain medicine. Again, paralyzed, flat on my back. So, learning to just be in pain was a big thing. And again, I was taking, in the hospital, I was hooked up to IVs with narcotics and then learning to take oral narcotics and not getting as quick of relief. Um, so when I was able to finally leave um, the nursing home and go to an inpatient rehab facility to learn to function in a wheelchair, learn how to brush my teeth and put socks on my feet when I couldn't move my left leg. Um, I I had gone there with the idea that, at this point it had been 14 weeks since I was home in my own house. And when I got to rehab, they asked me what my goal was. And I said, my goal was to go home. My goal was to put my kids to bed again. Now I live in a two-story home with no bedroom on the first floor. I
Mhm.
don't have a handicap accessible bathroom even on the first floor. It's a small bathroom that I could not fit a wheelchair in. And
Mhm.
so for me to go home, it required for me to be able to go up 12 flights of stairs.
Wow.
Um, Now, when I got to rehab, I had I had already made a decision beginning of January after New Year in the nursing home that if I was going to be in a wheelchair, and that's what I was being told is I'd be in a wheelchair the rest of my life, that I wasn't going to have my kids pushing me around in a wheelchair. And so I had stretchy exercise bands tied to the rails of my hospital bed so that I could do arm exercises while I was laying flat in my bed with the idea that I wasn't going to continue to waste away. I mean, I was 185 pounds when the accident happened. I was 160 pounds in the nursing home. So that was just all, I was a marathon runner when it happened. So I wasn't losing body fat. I was losing muscle. Um,
Wow.
and so I made it my goal to keep my upper body strength as best as I could for a person paralyzed in a bed, with the idea that I'd be able to push my wheelchair. Well, when I got to rehab, it turned out that I was also able to, even though I couldn't put no weight on my left side at all because of my pelvis, I couldn't even try to put weight on it. I could on my right, and I could stand between two parallel bars or a single ballet bar and hold myself up
Mhm.
with my upper body strength.
Wow.
Um, and so, even though I couldn't walk with a set of crutches and a railing I could start to maneuver really quickly to get up and down a stairs by putting the railing on my left side and a crutch under my right side. I could hop and lift myself up one step at a time without putting my left foot down, um, just simply because I had enough upper body strength to move a 160-pound frame. And
That's
so
fantastic.
they thought I was going to be in inpatient rehab for a month. I was able to get out in a week. Um,
Wow.
so much faster than the doctors thought I ever would be able to. Um, Within day 3 of being there, um, I had convinced my therapist, 2 young men, to take me out into a stairwell, um, and let me try to go up 12 steps.
Wow.
Um, Now, I will tell you that it was a sleety day in February, end of February, and there was a school delay. So Tanya did not. She normally was at my rehabs every morning.
Yeah.
She would drive over to Harrisburg to my rehab. Well, this particular day she was not there because the kids had a 2-hour delay,
Yes.
and so while she wasn't there, is what I convinced my therapist to let me go into the stairwell. And so this is a 3-story building. So 12 steps got you halfway between the first floor and the second floor. Uh, so, so I started the process with a therapist in front of me, a therapist behind me. It took me over 10 minutes to go 12 steps up there. And again, with my left lung had been collapsed. I had, even though again I was in great shape before, I was could hardly breathe anymore because my lung had
Yeah.
been damaged, and so I was sweating and I'm breathing heavy. And we made it to the landing. The 12 steps took 10 minutes, and nobody realized that that was not on the second floor or the first floor. I was halfway between the floors on a landing, and I was exhausted. Fortunately, one of them quickly ran and got a folding chair and put it there because I needed to sit back down again, wait,
Wow.
and then go back down the stairs. And back down was actually harder because gravity wants to pull you down the stairs.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
yeah, so I get to the bottom and I'm drenched and exhausted. They put me in my wheelchair. They roll me out of the stairwell, and right outside the stairwell is an emergency exit that goes to the outside. And so they rolled me out the exit into the sleet, freezing rain so I could cool down because I asked them to. I'm
Wow.
sitting there. Here comes Tanya,
Oh,
my wife, from rehab, or to visit me, and after getting the kids to school, and she's like, "What are you doing outside? And why are you all sweaty?" And I said, "I just climbed 12 stairs." And she looked at me like someone was about to be in big trouble.
mhm.
She goes, "Who let you climb 12 stairs?" And I was like, I got the therapist to let me do it." So, she wheels me in. She gives those guys a look. I'm not exactly sure what was said.
She
Um,
was not happy.
but I go up, I finish my stretching that they put me on a big table and they stretch my leg because it doesn't work. And um, I go to lunch in my room, and my doctor comes in, and before he even says a word, I look at him. I said, "I climbed 12 stairs." He said, "I heard." And I said, "I want to go home." And he said, "You are well ahead of where we thought you were, but we're not going to let you go home yet." So the next day, Tanya is with me. And again, I convinced my therapist to do it while she's there. And
Uh-huh.
I do it again. Not any faster or any better, but I
Yeah.
did it again. She saw it. And so I go back at lunch. And again, my doctor walks in. I said, "I climbed the stairs again." He goes, "I already heard." I said, I'm ready to go home." And he said, "Okay." He said,
Wow.
"We'll send you home on Saturday." So it's Thursday. I had been there since Sunday, so I didn't do anything on Sunday. So,
Okay.
um, so Tanya and I came back to our house, and I was still in a wheelchair, but I could climb the stairs one time a day to go up and one time a day to go down, and the
Wow.
rest of the time I was in a wheelchair. And we had to build ramps, and I don't think Tanya, I mean, Tanya was glad that I was home, but I don't think she was ready to have me in the house. Um, because for 14 weeks I wasn't there. And now, I had nurses and nurse aides and doctors and full-time care. And now my full-time care was going to be her. Um, and so I came home that Friday. I had dinner at the table in my wheelchair with my kids. I mean, we had spaghetti. I remember what we had.
Oh,
Um, I climbed up the stairs that evening, got into my bed, which is at the top of the stairs, and the kids came and said goodnight to me. And I didn't sleep. I don't, I was still in a lot of pain and
yeah.
uncomfortable. Um, but Monday, I started outpatient rehab and spent 2 years going to outpatient rehab.
Wow.
I was, getting better, but not very quickly. During that period of time, they found the hole in my heart that I mentioned earlier, and I ended up having a huge surgery to repair my abdominal muscles that put me back in the hospital for over 2 weeks. Um,
Wow.
Continuing to have, challenges. I threw a bunch of blood clots and from the damage to my pelvis and and all the scarring that happened to my veins and went through major concerns of losing my left leg during this period of time. And but I was pretty content. I would sit in this office where I am right now, and 2 years after the accident, I was working a little bit as a real estate agent, driving a car, still taking 90 milligrams of morphine twice a day, tremendous
Wow.
amount of morphine, of narcotics to deal with the pain. And at that time, nobody wanted me to go off of it because they didn't know how I would manage the pain otherwise.
Yes.
I'm now 39 years old, and I just knew I couldn't. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to die. I knew also that my life was never going to be the way it used to be at this point, and I wasn't going to get that back. And
Mhm.
and I knew that staying on narcotics long term wasn't going to be a solution. I just knew that. Um, but a little over 2 years after the accident, I'm sitting in this office doing some work. It's after school, and our daughter Katie is now 10, and she, at 10 years old, thought she was going to be the next Mia Hamm, professional women's soccer player.
Yep.
She loves soccer,
Yes,
and
I do.
so when she wasn't at practice, she would be in the yard juggling. And so I'm sitting in my office watching her, and I look up and I don't see her out front anymore. And I hear the front door open, and I hear her crying. And so she comes in here to this office, and I pull her over and I sit her on my lap, and I said, "What's wrong, honey? Did you hurt yourself?" She said, "No, I miss my old daddy, the one who would train with me."
Oh.
And all the pain and all the surgeries and all the things that I went through didn't hurt as much as that hurt. Because I struggled, uh, particularly the first year, with survivor's remorse. The why did I survive? The other driver died. I was given
Mhm.
less than 3% chance. Why am I here?
Mhm.
Talked to lots of people. Talked to therapists. Talked to priests. Talked to pastors who would come to visit me.
Mhm.
And ironically, nobody could really give me an answer that I really accepted or thought was good. And then one day I'm having coffee with a gentleman who's a Presbyterian pastor. His wife worked with me, and so we were talking. And he asked me how I was doing, and I told him how I was still struggling with this whole surviving and what I'm supposed to be doing with the fact that I survived.
Mhm.
And he said, maybe you just survived so your kids have a father.
Mm.
And it was the first real thing that someone said to me, like, yeah, I can be okay with that. Yes, I'm
Mhm.
here so my kids didn't have to grow up without their dad.
Without a dad.
Yeah. And so when Katie came to me and said those words that she missed her old daddy, the one who would train with her outside, I felt like I was failing the one reason I was here,
Mhm.
to be a dad, to be
Mhm.
the active dad that my kids at 10 and 6 now really needed. And
Mhm.
so the next day, I go to physical therapy, which is outpatient here in Carlisle where I live. And I walked in, and the therapy was at 10, and I walked in at 9:50, and I told my therapist I quit.
Mhm.
And I said, I can push myself harder than you're willing to push me. I mean, the reality was therapists in central Pennsylvania dealt mostly with people with hip replacements and shoulder and knee replacements, and they were much older than me. and they were rehabbing from orthopedic surgery to
Hmm.
get, you know, some of their quality of life back. And
Hmm.
I'd been a marathon runner and I had been a weightlifter, and I was like, I know what it's like to push your body harder than you're going to push me. And so I left therapy, uh, and that day drove 2 miles down the road to the Carlisle YMCA.
We love that.
Yeah, and unbeknownst to me at the time, 10 o'clock in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, United Cerebral Palsy, UCP, had a program at the YMCA where adults with special needs worked with trainers.
Oh my word.
And so that day, I get there a little bit after 10. I walk up to the circuit training machines, and I go to the first machine, which is a bench press, and there's a young man with Down syndrome on that machine, and he doing his exercises. He gets off. I go to get on the machine, and I go to press the machine, and it won't budge. I couldn't move it. He was doing so much more weight than I was capable of doing at that point. And so I, reluctantly reached down, moved the pins all the way up, 4 or 5 more plates, and proceed to do my exercise. I go to the next machine, and now I don't even bother to even try. I just start raising the weight, and I get through like 4 of these, and I mean, I felt
Exhausting.
well, and I felt very, very discouraged. I mean,
Yeah.
again, this young man with special needs was doing so much more weight than I was capable of. So I thought I'm going to go over to this recumbent bike because I used a recumbent bike in therapy, and so I get on this bike and I set it for a setting of 4, and I start pedaling, and I look over beside me, and here's a young woman with Down syndrome, and she's pedaling at 8, I'm at 4, and she's got 22 minutes in, and I've got like 6 minutes in, and I can't keep going. And
Hmm.
so I left, and I was back home in my house by 11 a.m. and I left therapy at 10. I was very discouraged. But that night, I'm laying in bed, and I wake up at 3 in the morning, and I woke up and I'm like, my shoulders are killing me. I'm like, and I wake Tanya up and I'm like, my shoulders are hurting. She's like, okay. I'm like, they're really sore. And she's like, okay. I'm like, do you understand? Like every day, all night, 4 or 5 times a night, I wake up, my pelvis, my back hurt, my legs got tons of nerve damage. It
Yeah.
hurts. It's waking me up. And I was waking up for something that was related to me working out. And I was like, this is
Excited.
great. This
That's,
is, and I learned about pain I can't control and pain I can control. I mean, again, you understand that, you've taught some exceptional ballet
hmm.
people, and it's a different mentality to push
It
yourself
is.
past what you think your threshold is, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it became literally starting that day, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I would go in and work out at 10 a.m. with adults with special needs, who, by the way, were some of the most motivational people I could be around,
Wow.
and
That's
and
awesome.
ultimately taught me. I mean, there's a guy that I became my lifting partner a lot of times. His name's Danny. Danny had Down syndrome, and Danny is strong. But Danny was like, the first time I met Danny, he walked up to me and "What happened to you?" Because I'm on a walker,
Yeah.
and I thought I was giving him the easy answer, and I just said I got hit by a car. And he looked at me. He goes, "Poor car."
Oh,
And his trainer just starts laughing.
oh,
And
that's
then
good.
I pull up my shirt and I show him all these scars from all my surgeries, and he comes over and gives me a bear hug. And
Oh,
almost like I had every rib in my body broken, and I
yeah.
thought it was going to break every bit. He picked me off the ground, and
Oh my
he
gosh.
sets me back down, and he gets about an inch from my nose and touching his nose, and he says, "You're going to be okay. You
Oh,
just need to get big and strong like me."
oh, I love that.
Proceeds to like do the wrestling poses and
Yeah,
starts going like this, and then like skips out of the gym. And then
that's a
every day after that, when I would come in, Danny'd come up and he'd knuckle bump me, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna get stronger today." Um,
oh,
and taught me a ton of lessons about like literally getting in love with going to the gym versus having these goals that were, my goal was to be able to
yes.
walk. on my goal is to be able to run again, and it was not going to happen, but
Yeah.
at least not at the level close to what I could run at before the accident.
Yeah.
But though, when I decided, after Katie kind of called me out, um, and then spent the next 2 years just working out, trying to strengthen my body. Well, I kept having more surgeries to have to be reset, like surgeries that would say you can't lift more than 10 pounds for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I'd lose everything I worked on and have to start kind of,
again.
2 steps back,
Yeah.
and then I have to start over again. Um, but eventually, just simply because of the fact that I was at the Y and our family had survived a car accident at Christmas time, a lot of the media, particularly the Central Pennsylvania news and newspapers at the time, would write articles about us, and that kind of snowballed into other people saying, "Well, we'd like to hear your story, or we'd like you to come speak at our organization." And I
Yeah.
didn't really set out as a motivational speaker, but because of the fact that we were kind of pushing through this recovery and we were doing things that other people said weren't possible. Um, yeah, I ended up in national magazines. I ended up in People magazine. I ended up in a
John.
full article, a 5-page article in Men's Fitness magazine about my recovery, and that kind of snowballed into bigger organizations asking me to come speak, and people started to say, "Hey, you should write a book." And honestly, at the time, I journaled, but I journaled for my kids because, one, I was on a lot of narcotics and I was starting to forget things. I
Yeah.
would have I went to a wedding about 3 years after the accident, 2.5 years, and I didn't have any memory of being there. I've seen pictures. I've seen pictures today of me, at their house with the whole wedding party. I have no memory of being there from the
Remember.
narcotics.
Wow.
And so, my kids were 8 and 4, and so they didn't understand, other than they knew their dad wasn't the same dad.
Yeah.
So me writing really became just a way for me to leave something that they could, where my thoughts were and what I was doing.
Yeah.
Um, and then the speaking got really big, and my kids were now like 12 and they were 8, and there were soccer games and there were piano um, recitals and
Mhm.
ballet recitals, and all
Mhm.
of a sudden I'm missing those because I'm in Las Vegas to give a 1 hour speech that takes 3 days of my time to do.
Right. To do.
And all of a sudden I started to realize again I was kind of missing my why, and I was so busy trying to speak and give motivation talks and the book, and I was missing my kids' activities now.
Mhm.
Um, and again, I was not being a dad that was present, and so I had to kind of
Make
slow
some
down.
adjustments. Mhm.
Yeah, slow down and really decide that what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to do was be a dad,
Mhm.
run my real estate team and speak locally where I could, or regionally within a day, overnight
Sure.
at most. But the big time, 1,000 people
Yeah.
presentations came opposite of what I thought I should be doing.
Yes.
So I kind of slowed it down.
Okay.
Um, Started coaching my kids' sports and doing the things that I felt were going to be of value to them and being present in their lives. And
Mhm.
so, for about 8 years, I just kind of parked all of it. And like I said, now, my son is in college. He was the last in the house. And when he left, uh, you know, I had,
Well, now I can focus on this a
yeah,
little.
and had, I've had 11 surgeries over the last few years just to try to save my left leg from having it amputated. And
Wow.
so I had vested interest always in staying healthy,
Yes.
eating healthy, keeping I mean, I'm a big guy now. I was a 180 pound runner. Now I'm like 215. But
Yeah.
everyone's like, you're big and muscular, but really it's just I'm missing half my abdominal muscles. My back and my pelvis are titanium.
Yeah.
Um, I can't use my left leg very well. So if I don't have all this muscle to kind of hold my frame together,
Right.
I
You'll
can't
be in
do the things
trouble.
that I need to
Yeah.
do, um, to just be an active father. And
Mhm.
so I've always, since the accident, been focused really hard on working out. Plus, like I said earlier, it's become this thing for me where pain I can control. So
Mhm.
I can push myself harder, and the the actual effect of pushing yourself harder lifting weights is to get bigger. I mean, I'm not strong because I have this goal of how much I want to be able to lift. I'm strong because I have this constant need to push myself.
Pass.
Yeah, and to have some actual residual pain from it that I can
Yeah.
control. And so byproduct of that is that you get bigger muscles. But for me,
Mhm.
it's always been this pain I can control versus the pain I can't. And
Mhm.
when I decided to get off narcotics, it was a big deal. And I had to work through a lot of alternative pain specialists, a lot of, other things that insurance at the time were like, we'll just let you keep taking narcotics. But, today they wouldn't do that. And today a lot of alternative stuff is available. But I had kind of pioneer it with acupuncturists and
Let's say acupuncture. Yes.
biofeedback and
Yeah.
meditation.
Yes.
My meditation's mostly prayer these days, but again, same concept, just being able to calm that because my leg is asleep all the time is what it feels like. My left leg is just pins and needles. So my
Wow.
reading comprehension was horrific because you ever try to focus on something when your foot's asleep,
And
it's yeah,
yeah,
kind of
it's
hard.
hard.
So
Yeah. Wow. Well, when we come back and we talk about where God was in this
I,
journey,
I would love that.
yeah, I would love that too. So, all right, everybody, thank you, John, and we'll be back, everybody.